If I want to get spiritual about all of this, you have to understand that there are forces larger than us people that exist. And I said that the answer was already written. Why did I get tired? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is that I was not supposed to win. Why was I not supposed to win? Is the world a better place now that I've lost? Maybe the win means more to Chase than it would have mean to me. Maybe Chase couldn't handle the loss. Maybe God decided, you know what, Chase has been through enough with mocking and things on the internet. Chase doesn't need the loss right now. Andrew can handle the loss better. Maybe God decided. Maybe if I won, we would have went out and celebrated that night, and Tristan would have smoked a bunch of cigars, and maybe he would have died 1 minute earlier. And maybe I get an extra minute with my brother because I lost. And if that's the case, then I'm glad I lost. You have to have faith in a higher power. There's a lesson in all of this. And I don't need to know exactly what it is. If God decides that for some reason he's going to instantly gas me when I was in perfect physical condition so that I lose, then I have to accept God's decision. And I'll take the punches in the face like a man. And I'm not going to bitch. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to take it. God decided on that day that that's what has to happen to me, so I did it. If you're going to go through life without understanding that there's a grander plan, a plan that's bigger than just you and your ego. The plan is bigger than just us and our egos, guys. The plan is bigger than just, I want to win. So I have to have what I want like a spoiled child. And what God decides and what's good for the universe and what's good for people to learn from and what's good for the general karmic retributions of the planet. Fuck all that. I want to win so that no one on the internet laughs at me. That's not how it works.
Andrew Tate lost the fight. Everything after that was theatre. An atheist autopsy of excuses, ego, and the refusal to say, I failed. Let's set the lens clearly up front and immovably. This is an atheist philosophical narration. There are no gods, no supernatural agents, no divine plans, no cosmic referees. Any time the word God appears in this script, it refers to a fictitious, imaginary, mythological entity, a story character, a narrative prop, an invisible friend for adults who don't want to process reality. There is no ambiguity here, none, zero wiggle room. Now, with that locked in, let's talk about Andrew Tate, a boxing match, and a cascade of excuses that followed one simple, unbearable fact. He lost. The only fact that matters. Andrew Tate lost a boxing match. Not spiritually, not symbolically, not because of vibes, destiny, or alignment. He lost physically, under agreed rules, in a sport designed to produce winners and losers. That is the only fact that matters. Everything that followed was damage control. Our reality actually works. Outcomes in boxing are caused by preparation, conditioning, skill, timing, decision-making, fatigue, age, opponent competence, mistakes under pressure. That's it. No metaphysics required. When someone loses a fight, the explanation lives inside those variables or nowhere at all. So when Tate started explaining his loss, we're not listening for truth. We're listening for avoidance. Excuse number 1, the imaginary mythological God. Let's deal with this first, cleanly and mercilessly. One of Tate's excuses was that a fictitious, imaginary, mythological entity he calls God decided or influenced the outcome. From an atheist perspective, this is immediately disqualifying. There is no such entity. There is no supernatural will. There is no divine intervention. There is no cosmic test. There is no metaphysical lesson. Invoking an imaginary God is not explanation. It is fantasy narration. And more importantly, it is responsibility removal. If an imaginary being decided the outcome, then Tate's training, discipline, strategy, intelligence, self-proclaimed superiority were all irrelevant, which quietly destroys his entire brand. You cannot sell total self-mastery while claiming invisible forces override your actions. That's not dominance, that's fatalism with branding. Why the imaginary God excuse is pathetic, even by his standards. This matters, so let's be blunt. Blaming a mythological imaginary friend for a boxing loss is not just wrong, it's embarrassing. Because it's the weakest possible excuse. It can't be questioned, it can't be disproven, it can't lead to improvement. It explains everything and nothing. It's the excuse you use when you don't want feedback. And crucially, this imaginary God only appears after losses. When Tate wins, the imaginary entity vanishes. When Tate loses, suddenly mythology clocks in for work. That alone tells you this isn't belief, it's convenience. But this wasn't his only excuse. And this is important. The video is not just about the imaginary God. Tate didn't make one excuse. He made several, sometimes overlapping, sometimes contradicting each other, which is exactly what you expect when someone is scrambling to preserve an identity. Let's walk through the pattern, not the mythology. Excuse number 2, external forces and interference. Alongside the imaginary God, Tate gestured toward the idea that forces outside himself affected the outcome. Not in a concrete, testable way, not with evidence, but in a vague, conspiratorial fog. This is a classic move. If you can't say I was beaten, you say the environment wasn't right, the situation wasn't fair, things weren't aligned, circumstances interfered. These are non-explanations. They feel explanatory without actually explaining anything. They function to move causality away from the self. Excuse number 3, narrative reframing as destiny or growth. Another move Tate leans on is reframing loss as meant to happen, part of a bigger journey, a lesson, fuel. This sounds mature, it isn't. From an atheist philosophical standpoint, this is just retrofitted meaning slapped onto failure to make it sting less. There is no destiny, there is no narrative arc written into the universe, there is no lesson unless you extract one through honest analysis. Calling a loss meant to happen is a poetic way of refusing to ask, what did I do wrong? Excuse number 4, minimisation and deflection. Another consistent pattern is minimisation. The loss becomes not that important, misunderstood, overblown, irrelevant to the bigger picture. This is psychological triage. If the event threatens your identity, you shrink the event. But here's the problem. You don't get to sell hyper-competitive masculinity and pretend competition doesn't matter when you lose. You can't have it both ways. The contradictions don't matter to him, but they matter to us. Here's what's fascinating. These excuses contradict each other. If an imaginary God decided the outcome, preparation doesn't matter. If circumstances interfered, destiny didn't. If the loss was meaningless, why explain it at all? But Tate doesn't care about consistency, because consistency is for people who are grounded in reality. Excuses only need to do one thing: protect the ego in the moment. The core issue, an identity that cannot absorb failure. Strip away every excuse, mythological or otherwise, and we arrive at the core problem. Andrew Tate has built an identity that cannot metabolize loss, not reflect on it, not learn from it, not sit with it. His identity requires permanent dominance, so when dominance fails to appear, reality must be wrong, not him. Why an atheist lens matters here. This is where the atheist philosophical narrator matters. Atheism removes all escape hatches. No gods, no destiny, no metaphysical tests, no cosmic scripts, only cause and effect. Which means the conclusion is unavoidable. Andrew Tate lost because of Andrew Tate. His preparation, his decisions, his performance, his limitations, his opponent. Full stop. Blaming the supernatural is ridiculous and pathetic. Let's not sanitize this. Blaming a fictitious, imaginary, mythological, supernatural entity for a boxing loss is ridiculous. It's something a child does when they lose a game. It's something adults grow out of. Or at least they're supposed to. For a man who markets himself as the apex of masculinity, this is especially pathetic. Strength without accountability is cosplay. Confidence without honesty is noise. Masculinity without responsibility is a performance, not a trait. What real strength would have looked like? From an atheist, grounded, adult perspective, real strength would have sounded like this. I lost, I misjudged, I'll reassess. No gods, no mythology, no destiny, no excuses, just feedback. That sentence requires more courage than any excuse he offered. Why this matters beyond Andrew Tate. This isn't just about one man. This is about a cultural sickness where people externalize failure, mythologize mistakes, and treat accountability as humiliation. Blaming imaginary forces feels comforting, but it guarantees stagnation. If failure is supernatural, improvement is optional. A reality doesn't care about your story. There is no God, no destiny, no test, no higher plan. There is only reality. Andrew Tate lost a fight. Then he lost the argument with reality. Then he tried to narrate his way out. From an atheist philosophical standpoint, the verdict is simple. The loss is his fault. The excuses are ridiculous. Blaming the supernatural is pathetic. Reality keeps score whether you like it or not, and it doesn't believe in imaginary friends. Not left, not right, just real.